The Virginia Cable Telecommunications Association and your local cable provider presents Cable Reports. Join us now as Cable Reports brings you up to date on current issues facing the Commonwealth through discussions with your local legislators and other policymakers from across Virginia.
From the General Assembly and the City of Richmond, I'm Woody Evans for the Virginia Cable Telecommunications Association, connecting Virginians to their government. We're pleased to connect you with Secretary Brian Moran, Public Safety.
Yes.
That's quite a distance from what you have done in the past. Talk to us about how you get here and your background, experience, and training.
Well, thanks, Woody. I appreciate being on and appreciate what Cable Association does. It's important to interact with our citizens in Virginia and inform them of their state government. So appreciate the program and being invited on. And I am the new Secretary of Public Safety and thrilled that the governor had the confidence in me to appoint me to this important position. Practicing lawyer since 1988 in Virginia. Member of the House of Delegates for 12 years. Served on the Courts of Justice Committee. Served on the Virginia State Crime Commission, which did a lot of good work in the criminal justice area. I was on the Juvenile Justice Committee, Virginia Alcohol Safety Action Program. Served on the Secure Virginia panel appointed by Governor Warner after the 2001 attacks in Virginia. Also served as a prosecutor for 7 years out of law school. I served as a prosecutor in Arlington County for 7 years. So brought that wealth of experience in the criminal justice area and the legislative experience. Only member of the cabinet who has actually served in the legislature. Mm-hmm. We have a wonderful, strong cabinet, great expertise in their respective areas. But I do think it's helpful, and I think the governor saw that it would be helpful to have someone from the legislature in the cabinet. So I bring that, and it's been I'm thrilled, and it's proud to be able to serve the citizens in this capacity.
Great. And Mother Nature brought you some real surprises yet this year early, did it not?
Yeah, I think we are all anxious for spring and warm weather, and see the daffodils around the Capitol will be a welcome sight. But yes, in all seriousness, we have faced a number of winter storms, snow, ice, events in the Commonwealth. And let me tell you, Woody, I think from my just over now a month being in this position, I want to say to my fellow Virginians and taxpayers that we enjoy wonderful the service of state employees, dedicated, committed individuals, particularly in the areas under public safety. I have been working with the Virginia Department of Emergency Management in response to these storms, and they're excellent employees, knowledgeable, committed. Also, VDOT, great credit goes to the Department of Transportation and Secretary Lane and Secretary of Transportation, doing a wonderful job responding. So all emergencies are first local, so it's up to the localities to respond. But we are here for any assistance to provide them and resources from either the state police, VDIM, National Guard. This last snowstorm, the governor did declare a state of emergency, which activated our National Guardsmen. We had about 300 on call. They staffed the armories in the state. In fact, I had the opportunity to go and visit 2 armories and visit with our guardsmen in Petersburg. And in Petersburg, there was one other guy. He'll come to me.
You've been around the state.
I've been around,
yeah.
But wonderful. I got to meet with them, and we had a wonderful time. I love to hear from them in terms of Powhatan is the other area, the Powhatan. I had an opportunity to visit with them, find out what they do during the week. There were a couple of DOC employees, Department of Corrections employees. There was a grave digger was one individual. Wow. Auto mechanic, another. Some were young, they were in school, but they're part of the National Guard. And when they got called up, they put their uniforms on that they pay for themselves. They report to the armory. They stay overnight on cots, and they're ready to respond to any and all emergencies here in the Commonwealth. So I played with a chainsaw with them. They were on duty to clear debris and use their chainsaws. And so I was with them and tried the chainsaw and all. So that I just want to tell, you know, as a now I'm learning this particular position, and the tremendous dedication on the part of so many state employees and those volunteers with the National Guard. That we are, you know, that's our job, to be ready for any and all emergencies, and you know, I'm confident we are.
And I know you've faced some sad consequences in terms of the Virginia State Police. Talk to us about several funerals you've had to attend recently.
Well, that is, and in learning just how dangerous it is to serve as a law enforcement member of law enforcement here in the Commonwealth of Virginia and you know, throughout the country. I've attended 3 funerals now, as recently as Tuesday. Monday, I apologize. Attended the funeral for Captain Wayne Quick, a volunteer with the Waynesboro Police Department. His funeral was Monday. Before that, attended Deputy House's funeral in Greensville, Virginia. He was on duty. He automobile accident, and then the first day, one of my first official actions was notifying the governor of a death in the state police ranks of Sergeant Felipe down in the Martinsville area. And so those are 3 funerals attended now, and so it really does you know, demonstrate just the sacrifice that our law enforcement officers put on the line every day. It is indeed a dangerous job, and you know, we want to. I go to express the appreciation, the deep appreciation of, you know, of our fellow 8 million Virginians, and recognize their bravery, their courage, and their dedication to the jobs.
Well, our condolences to those families as well. Tell us a little bit more about the state police, how large a body of men and women we have, as you indicated, so dedicated and committed to public safety.
Yeah, well, the state police is a terrific organization. It's been extremely well run for many years. Current superintendent is Steve Flaherty, Colonel Steve Flaherty. He's been there a number of years and extremely well run and dedicated professionals. There's also the Department of Corrections. 11 agencies within the Secretary of Public Safety. Yeah, 11, and we some variety. The ABC, the Alcohol Beverage Control Commission, because indeed that was created after the 1920s when legalization of alcohol. So it was emphasis was on control, so it was under public safety. But it also generates about $700 million in gross revenue a year.
$700 million
it's a big business, yes. So on the one hand, we want folks to purchase alcohol, but on the other hand, drink responsibly. State police and other organizations would appreciate that. So yeah, so ABC, we also, Department of Corrections, Parole Board.
Oh, the Parole Board.
Important agency as well. They review those eligible for parole in the Commonwealth. There's something called geriatric release. If you hit age 60 or 65, you're eligible for parole. And those who were sentenced before 1996, which was when we actually eliminated discretionary parole. And then we move, we've already mentioned Department of Emergency Management, National Guard, State Police. There's the Commonwealth Attorneys Service Council, provide training to our Commonwealth attorneys across Virginia, which is very important. You know, a lot of our fellow Virginians watch these television shows like I don't even watch them, so CIS, is that what it is? CSI, but folks think you come to appreciate all that, and that's what you expect at a trial. That takes a lot of resources, and so our prosecutors need to be trained well, and a lot of new technology now used in the courtroom, and a lot of technology in terms of catching perpetrators. So it's important to train our prosecutors, and having been one, I appreciate that very much. So yeah, 11 different and distinct agencies. Department of Juvenile Justice.
Oh, Juvenile Justice as well.
That's very important. You know, we have just over 600 juveniles incarcerated now in the Commonwealth. So the Department of Juvenile Justice is incarceration, but then also treatment services. We have over 30 court service units that work in our juvenile courts throughout Virginia.
The theory being they're so young they could still be rehabilitated. And
absolutely, really. These are folks who, young, very young, 14 in some instances, and the first line of defense there is really services. Let's get them an education. Let's provide them services. Many of them are in a very difficult environmental circumstances, and so we want to provide them opportunities. And we also, of course, want those who, dangerous, violent crimes are going to be incarcerated. So DJJ really has that kind of a dual personality of incarceration, but then also services.
Right.
Another agency of great import is the Department of Criminal Justice Services. They do a lot of the research that's necessary for what are the trends in criminal justice, what's working, what are best practices that are being used throughout the country. They also funnel a great deal of federal grant money through that agency to services as well. Sexual and domestic violence, sexual assault. So there's a number of grants that come through the federal government through DCGS, and then DCGS distributes those funds. So, yeah, each of them are exciting opportunities, also provide tremendous services to the Commonwealth. So, yeah, it's a thrill to be where I am and working with each and every one of them.
Now, before you accepted this secretariat, did you have an idea that your jurisdiction was going to be so huge?
Well, and diverse.
Yes, yes.
It's obviously had a lot of experience with juvenile justice, criminal justice services. I served on one of their advisory boards, in fact, when I was in the legislature, and through my service in the legislature itself, had a lot of interaction with those agencies. But the breadth of responsibilities is, gives you a sense of real, very proud to be serving in this position, but also a great deal of responsibility. I mean, from the parole board, making sure that they fairly evaluate petitions for parole, who gets released, who doesn't get released. Those are really impacting people's lives and society as a whole, and the community that those offenders would return to. So you want to put very good people in place, and the Governor McAuliffe is working on that, and make sure we have the right people in the right places to perform well for the citizens of the Commonwealth.
To some extent, do you work with the judiciary, at least in terms of planning, those kinds of things?
Yeah, hey, we're fond of saying it's the Virginia way.
Yes.
And to me, that means a very collaborative process.
Right.
Everyone's in the room, around the table discussing it. And when it comes to criminal justice, to work with DOC, Department of Corrections, you need someone there in the courts too. You need the prosecutors here. You need the defense bar. And what are the trends? How do you respond to, if there was a peak in certain crimes? You want as much expertise and knowledge around the table as the table will afford. That's my view, and that's, I think, the view of this governor, and that's really the Virginia way. Try to reach consensus, collaborate. We have something called the Virginia Sentencing Commission. It does the same thing, that with respect to figuring out what the appropriate sentences are and what are the historical trends for various crimes, so that we don't legislate or we don't administer in a vacuum. We have as much information as possible to make the right decisions. So the court system is an important stakeholder in the public safety arena.
Now, we were talking earlier before we started the show in a jocular manner about the use of drones. That's been in the news. I don't know to what extent the state police will start using drones for various purposes. I know there are concerns, especially around privacy related to that. Is that something that your agency is looking at?
Yes, and there are a number of new technological advances that we need to figure out how to handle or how to use in an appropriate method. And that really is a society's decision here. we have just this legislative session, a technological advance that we're using for police and law enforcement to read license plates.
Okay.
You read a license plate, and you run it, and you find out the person has a warrant. Well, as it turns out, that technology helped lead the state police and law enforcement to discover Captain Quick's body in disappearance. So they have very effective uses. But at the same time, we need to balance that with personal privacy issues. The legislature is struggling with that, and we'll do what we can in terms of providing the legislators necessary information to make good, informed decisions. Drones are in the same, and they have tremendous law enforcement capabilities. But do you balance that with the privacy? Do you want a drone looking in your backyard? And so do we? Those are going. We're the national level we're doing that, and in the Commonwealth we're doing that, and I see our role as a resource to provide the necessary information to make informed decisions about the practical, the appropriate use of those technological advances, particularly in law enforcement.
Now, there is another piece of legislation that I'm sure you're aware of that deals with your agency and another in terms of a potential merge of those agencies. Talk to us a little bit about that and the pros and cons.
Yeah, well, you're referencing really important legislation. Governor McAuliffe mentioned it in his State of the Commonwealth address on the first night. We've been working on combining the Secretary of Public Safety, in which I'm the Secretary, with the Secretary of Homeland Security. And the reason for that is coordination, better collaboration between agencies. I'll give credit, JLARC. JLARC did a great study on how the Commonwealth's readiness for a disaster. Are we prepared? Are we taking the necessary steps to be the best prepared we can be? And they said there is some problem with having a different Secretary for Homeland Security and a different Secretary of Public Safety, because as we've talked about, under the Secretary of Public Safety, we have VDEM, the Department of Emergency Management, we have the State Police, we have the National Guard. Now, those three agencies need to work very closely together in response, in preparation for a disaster. But in Homeland Security was in another area.
Right.
And so what JLAC said is, really Homeland Security should be with the Secretary, because those agencies have to work with Homeland Security. And it would make just frankly more sense to work together. And we're doing that. Delegate Scott Linghamfelter from Prince William. In fact, the day I was announced by the governor, he called me and said, "Brian, have you read the JLAC report?" I said, "No, I haven't read the JLAC report." In my free time, I didn't know about it, and because I was a little surprised by the appointment itself. So I've since read it, and it was a great report. Credit to JLARC, credit to Delegate Linghamfelter asking for the study. So Delegate Linghamfelter and Senator Bryce Reeves have been patroning legislation, both Republicans, and the legislation's endorsed and supported by the governor, so this is a nice bipartisan effort. And another reason why I really love this job, really isn't partisan. I mean, public safety shouldn't be a partisan issue. That people want to be safe, whether they're Democrats, Republicans, Independents, or whatever. And so this is a real one of those times when Democrats and Republicans are coming together, two Republican sponsors, the governor, very supportive of this legislation. And for your viewers, what it means is we're going to have more collaboration with the departments. Break down barriers. Sometimes it's just unnecessary because the agency is reporting to one secretariat, but another secretary with Homeland Security was giving them orders, and they were saying, "Well, you're not my boss." I mean, some simple things like that you deal with in your own organization. And so we're breaking down those barriers, and it will help us prepare for a disaster and respond to a disaster. And within that legislation, I want to mention also there's funding for additional planners in the Hampton Roads area. If we were to receive a large-scale hurricane, there's real problems with evacuating Hampton Roads. And so this budget, both the House and the Senate, have passed a budget that funds additional planners. And we're going to put those planners to work immediately on devising plans, working with the local governments, which is imperative to have local cooperation, and devising plans that we can evacuate in case of a, a Category 3 or worse hurricane in Hampton Roads. And we need to be, with the climate the way it is, and the storms that are becoming more frequent, stronger, we need to prepare. And so I really credit the legislators. I think this is a opportunity for all of us to come together and work on this, and so far that has been the case.
So will that collaboration include not only the Secretary of Homeland Security, yourself, Department of Transportation, probably, and the military installations in the Hampton Roads area?
And others, the local governments, higher education. Where would evacuees go?
Right.
Possibly, local colleges, dorms. There's schools. I mean, there's a lot of possibilities. We need to work on those plans, and this legislation goes a long way to helping us do that, and provides us the resources to work with the local governments and the various entities that are important to a successful evacuation.
No, you're absolutely right. Those plans are so important. I wouldn't know where to go if there were a hurricane. I'm sure you have information like that on your website.
Well, those of us who live in Northern Virginia and Hampton Roads know that you can't get anywhere very fast. So transportation is important. You know what? After Isabel, I was on Hurricane Isabel. I was on the Secure Virginia panel, and one of those was getting those gates that are now on Route 64. You close the gates to get people out, so you're not having traffic concerns. So all of those issues need to be addressed, and people need to know what's the best practice and what to do on behalf of our citizens. It's a prepare, respond, and it's, again, I'll tell you, I've been very pleased with the professionalism of our state employees.
You talked a little bit about new technologies. I'm wondering, for example, because we see the electronic signage on Interstate 95, 495, for example, when there are snowstorms, Amber Alerts, those kinds of things. Is that something you work in conjunction with your other cabinet members on?
Yes. Yep. Well, just to show you the collaboration of all of us. The governor has weekly cabinet meetings every Monday morning. We meet, and we're responsible to present weekly reports to the chief of staff and the governor reads them. He asked for one of my reports on the state police, made a big drug bust, and he was aware of it and asked me about it. So there is that personal communication, and then also in terms of when it responded to disaster, snow emergency, work very closely with Secretary Lane and other from transportation and other affected secretariats. So far it's worked very, very well, and there seems to be a real team spirit and the governor exudes that as well. I mean, that's the type of personality he is, brings everybody together. So, I look forward to that, working with my other.
You talked about corrections a little bit, and we talked about bipartisanship. I've noticed a bipartisan national movement to deal with corrections in terms of reducing the costs related to corrections. I mean, there are a lot of correctional institutions that have been built over the last 15 to 20 years. It's almost like if you build them, they will come. That has occurred, unfortunately, from the perspective of a lot of people. But I see there's a move to get people out of, not so much into corrections, but into other treatment facilities as opposed to being locked up.
Well, a great point, Woody, and credit goes to my predecessor and the Secretary of Public Safety, Marlon Decker, now Judge Decker, and also Governor McDonnell. Re-entry was one of their priorities in public safety, and I give them great credit. And it's something that the governor I share, the current governor I share now, Governor McAuliffe, that there is an expense of locking people up. And I think the citizens of Virginia and the nation are starting to scratch their heads. Really, is this a good use of money? And particularly in the areas with nonviolent criminals, is this the best way to handle this? Some need to be locked up. So there's no question we're going to, any changes we'll review very, very carefully. But I think there is a movement nationally, both Democrats and Republicans, to look at reentry. And Governor McDonnell did that. And we're certainly looking forward to continue those efforts. And 90% of inmates do return to their communities. So, they're going to get out at some point. And so do they get out with some skills, some ability to get a job? Health care, we haven't talked about one of the governor's main initiatives this session is to close the coverage gap. And, Medicaid expansion would assist those people as well to have some health care when they get out. So there's a number of factors involved, but working with the director of Department of Corrections, we're going to continue to review those opportunities where we can provide some skills, so when they do return to the community, they don't recidivize. We have a very low recidivism rate. We want to be #1 in the country, and we're working towards that. Right. I share that goal with the governor and our director. So it lowers recidivism. That means you don't have another crime. If you don't have another crime, you don't have another victim.
Right. Right.
And that's what this should be about, in addition to improving the opportunity for that individual to get out and remain clean and stay out of trouble.
We've got about a minute and a half left.
Geez, where does time go?
We talked a little bit about the National Guard, but I'm always amazed at those volunteers, as you indicate. Talk to us a little bit about the National Guard, what it does, and how important it is.
Well, it is. They're the nation's force from the beginning, right? We have a fine historical tradition with the National Guard, and we have a wonderful force here in Virginia. And one of my first days on the job, I went down to Camp Pendleton and visited the base at Camp Pendleton in Virginia Beach, Langley Air Force Base, the F-22s and the fighter planes, jets located there. So we have a number of installations here in Virginia, military installations. The National Guard's a big part of that. So those are big facilities, important facilities. Number of our guardsmen are being deployed.
Wow.
They've had deployments to Afghanistan and Iraq. We just had 4 guardsmen sent off last weekend from Virginia Beach. Another regiment just came in to Fort Hood. They're returning from a deployment. They'll be at Fort Hood, and then they're returning to Virginia Beach, and we'll be certain to go down there and welcome them back to the Commonwealth.
Great.
So we really do honor their service, and that's an important component in the Commonwealth's public safety arena.
Great. Well, thank you for being here, taking the time. Secretary of Public Safety Brian Moran. Good to see you.
Nice to be with you, Woody. Thank you.
Thank you for watching Cable Reports, brought to you by the Virginia Cable Telecommunications Association, connecting Virginians to their government. Until next time, I'm Woody Evans.